And welcome back in for episode number 3 of the Ball Boys podcast. Welcome in to all of our fans, and welcome in to the people that hate us because you like the Buffalo Bills. If you didn't see that, go check out one of our recent videos and just look at the comment section. Do yourself a favor. That'll be a good laugh there. But today we are focusing mainly on the NBA and the draft specifically. We're recording this, right after pick 20 was just taken. So,
Yep.
if any surprise trades happen, last year I think the Sixers around this area traded for D'Anthony Melton, so we could get perhaps a live reaction. But right about now, we've seen what we need to see to sit down and record an episode. In the last week, a ton of NBA trades have gone down too,
Yep.
so we'll talk about that
Crazy.
as well.
Crazy.
But I want to start with the top three. And we're going to start with Victor Wembanyama. He goes number 1 in the draft. Not a surprise there, but a conversation that we've yet to have that has been had all around the NBA world is, what is your expectations for this guy's career? Because I've seen as far from GOAT to Greg Oden. So I'd love to know where you stand on that spectrum.
It's tough, because I think he has such an amazing skill set for his size, and I want to see him succeed because it's amazing to watch him, but I get this worry, bro, that because of his size and the NBA, it's not easy, and as he gets older, I'm not sure if he's going to be putting on a lot of muscle yet, so
He actually said that he's not going to bulk up. He was
yeah.
asked about it, and he said, "Why would I bulk up? They should skinny down." And thought that was an odd answer.
Yeah.
Um, my personal expectations for him are that he falls somewhere around the Anthony Davis career arc.
Oh, yeah.
I think injuries are going to play a part, but I don't think they're going to end his career like they did Greg Oden. I think there's a shot that Victor Wembanyama gets to win some titles. I mean, he's a much better ball handler and shooter than Anthony Davis, so obviously I'm not saying he's a direct comp to Anthony Davis, but I think this guy's going to be one of the top 100 players of all time when we get around to that list. I think that a title is certainly a possibility for him. He's going to be a good defensive player, and in the right situation, he could do a lot of winning, just like Anthony Davis. However, the big worry for this guy every single season is going to be, can he stay healthy? Just like Anthony Davis. So that's where I land on that. I think it was correct for the Spurs to take him number 1 overall. Clearly the consensus overall first pick on every single draft board. And at his ceiling, he could be the greatest of all time. And I don't think that's the case for anybody else in that draft. So you got to go Wemby. Now, number 2, Brandon Miller, the forward from Alabama, goes to the Hornets. I see you shake your head there. For the audience, we didn't discuss our thoughts on these picks. We wanted to get them raw. And, we're going to disagree later in the show, but we agree here. I think Scoot Henderson was the clear pick. LaMelo and Scoot, I think, could have been fine together. They both do play better with the ball in their hand, so I understand schematically going with Brandon Miller. And this kid did all he could to not be taken by the Hornets. I mean, he said LeBron was better than Jordan. He said Paul George was better than Michael Jordan. He tried. He tried to get out of Charlotte any way he could, but they still took him. But yeah, I think they whiffed. I think Scoot was the better prospect. I think when you're the Hornets and you have the number 2 pick, you got to go based on talent. Force LaMelo and Scoot to figure it out. The ceiling is much higher. And maybe that's just because I have a sour taste in my mouth from what Brandon Miller did in the NCAA tournament. But on the biggest stage, this guy crumbled. And he's got a long career ahead of him, but Scoot's got that dog in him. And I don't know if Brandon Miller does.
Yeah, bro. I mean, you kind of took a lot of things I was gonna say, but I'm with Scoot, bro. Like his talent alongside Melo like that, especially like your team like Charlotte, where you need butts in the seats, and have both of them in the backcourt. I think that would be an awesome duo. And you have Jordan leaving the team, So, I mean, a fresh new start with them two would be an awesome addition. They did take Miller, which I think will be good, but like you said, the off the court issues, I think that's a huge red flag to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did it or not, but just to be involved like that, and even when if in an NFL, NBA draft, whatever it is, I think you always take talent over need. I think that's 101.
Especially if you're that high in the draft.
Exactly.
When you're later in the draft, kind of that, it started at about 17, where the Lakers picked, then the Heat, then the Warriors. Those guys, they have the luxury of drafting more for fit. But if you're picking number 2 in the draft, you got a lot of work to do. And
Yeah.
for anybody that doesn't know about the Brandon Miller situation, because really hasn't gotten a ton of coverage, um, all of this is alleged, but I'm going to give you the synopsis of where we're at here. Essentially, Brandon Miller, one of his roommates, teammates, etc., is being charged with a felony murder charge right now. And what Brandon Miller's association is with is that guy, while he was out, texted Brandon Miller to bring him his gun, and Brandon Miller obliged. Now, all reports are saying that he's been a cooperating witness and working with the police, so who knows what the extension of this was. I was talking with some of my buddies during the draft about it, and they don't know basketball that well, more of casuals, and I was explaining it to them, and we went over some scenarios where it's like, hey, like maybe Brandon Miller thought that like that guy was about to get jumped by 5 guys and needed his gun just in case. Like, who knows what he thought the circumstances were. So obviously, I'm not accusing him of anything, but when Scoot is more talented and Brandon Miller has whatever's going on here with him, I would lean Scoot. But again, at their ceiling, I'll say this. At its ceiling, schematically, it would work better for the Hornets. Who knows if they're done making moves? Maybe they got some tricks up their sleeves and they want to be a playoff team next season, and this could work out for them. And now I do want to talk about Scoot because he was taken with the 3rd overall pick by the Portland Trail Blazers. And I don't want this to not be about Scoot, but here's where we're at. Portland now has Scoot, Anthony Simons, and Dame as their 3 best players. 3 6'2" and under guards as their best players that all need the ball in their hand to be effective. And we've been seeing so many reports that have gone back and forth over the past couple days of Dame wants out, Dame's loyal to the grind, Dame wants to be traded to Miami, Dame doesn't want to go anywhere. Portland Trailblazers tried to trade the 3rd overall pick and Anthony Simons to the Nets to get Mikal Bridges. The Nets said no. So there's a lot going on here. And personally, I stand on the side of Dame's going to want out. Whether it's late tonight, tomorrow, I think we're going to hear that Dame is not happy with the Scoot Henderson draft pick and he wants out. Or, since the Blazers know that the Pelicans wanted Scoot, they took Scoot and are going to trade him for Zion in the coming days. One of those 2 things I feel has to happen. Otherwise, it's like, what the hell is going on here in Portland? Because a team that really could have drafted for scheme is Portland. You had both of the Thompson twins there. They're both at 6'7". They would have fit a lot better with this team. And if you're trying to contend and trying to build around Dame, that's what you would have done. But they didn't. So it feels like Portland wants Dame to leave, but they don't want to ask him to go. It feels like they're doing all that they can to try and get Dame to break up with them. That way they don't look like the bad guys. But drafting Scoot, essentially drafting his replacement, doesn't seem like you want him to stay.
No, I mean it's crazy. I mean, I'm for them it made a lot of sense. I think just because of the trade value of having Scoot, and having the option be, do we keep Dame, get rid of Scoot, or do we keep Scoot, get rid of Dame? And I think for me, if I had to pick a guess, I think if I had to put my chips down on the table on what would happen, I would go. It might not be the most favorable, but I think Zion to Portland makes the most sense schematically because I don't think they want to get rid of Dame. I
Yeah,
think
I don't think so
I just think it's
either.
gonna happen.
And there's also the off chance that the team flips Anthony Simons for just
Yeah.
another wing and keeps Dame and Scoot and tries to run it with that. Again, I don't think that that would be good. Scoot's NBA comparison on a lot of levels has been Russell Westbrook. Not the triple doubles, but the way he is offensively. He's not a shooter. He needs the ball in his hand. And Damian Lillard, while he could shoot, isn't exactly an off ball player. Schematically, those 2 together isn't going to work. And how many times is Portland going to run this small backcourt with Dame before they realize it doesn't work if they go with the Simons deal? Because you tried Dame and CJ, didn't work. Dame and Simons, didn't work. Guess where Dame and Scoot is headed? Not going to work. So, um, yeah, I think that they move off of Dame. If I was Portland, I would move off of Dame. At this point, your roster's nowhere near good enough. I would try and get what I can for Dame and move in a younger direction. Now, we gotta talk about some of these trades because there's been
Great.
a lot of trades. And the first one we want to talk about is the most recent one, the Chris Paul to the Warriors deal that saw Chris Paul get sent from Washington to Golden State, and Jordan Poole and two future first round picks go to the Wizards. And I don't know where you stand on this either, but I tweeted it out. The Wizards won this deal. Listen, Chris Paul is 38, 39 years old, a very injury riddled point guard. So let's start there. The Wizards were able to get two first round picks and a 24-year-old guy who is an absolute bucket. And listen, I'm not saying Jordan Poole is going to be this world beater, but you could see why his play declined last year after the whole Draymond situation. The chemistry was never there, and it felt like the team didn't really believe in him. All the fans were against him. So a fresh start is great for Jordan Poole. Also for the Warriors, they can't be done, right? There has to be more moves to be made. First off, Draymond hasn't even re-signed with the team. But let's just pretend that Draymond did. What is your closing lineup in playoff games? Is it Chris Paul at the 1, Curry at the 2, Clay at the 3, Dre at the 4, and Looney at the 5? If so, the floor spacing's terrible. If you're telling me that Looney's getting taken out and Wiggins is in at the 4, is Clay supposed to be guarding the other team's best small forward? And is Draymond supposed to be matched up with Jokic, Anthony Davis, Embiid, Giannis? Like, and yeah, so I said that to my buddy earlier, and he goes, "Oh, the Warriors will just outscore them." Really? Because their offense, even out there, is not better than Boston, not better than Denver, not better than Phoenix. Uh, and we'll see where the Lakers, Philly, and Bucks shake out because obviously those teams all still have moves to be made this offseason. But right now, this Warriors team feels directionless to me, and I respect the Warriors front office enough to think that there's more moves coming. I'm not going to jump the gun here, but you got to start to wonder, is Klay Thompson about to be moved? You know, I floated out this idea on Twitter. You're a Sixers fan. Klay Thompson for Tobias Harris. You know, I'm
That'd be
not
great.
sure if Sixer fans love it. I'm not sure if Warrior fans love it, but they make roughly the same amount of money. And the Sixers could use a 3-point shooter to the level of
Mhm.
Klay Thompson, and the Warriors need wing help.
Yep.
So, you know, Tobias Harris could match up with a LeBron James and hold his own a hell of a lot better than Klay, at least.
Facts. No, I mean, kind of wild. This is the first trade of the new regime in Golden State, and you know, it's questionable. Like you said, the Wizards I think came out on top, getting a guy like Poole and a young guy like that who has no problem getting buckets, especially with that team. I mean, he's the alpha probably now, and I I think it's really good for their part, and I'll get into it more once we get into the next trade. But I like the direction that the Wizards are going in. I mean, they had no direction. They had old players, and then to the Warriors side, I do like it. I don't love it. Chris Paul, I think, would be probably the sixth man, maybe.
Yeah,
Um,
my point is, he's definitely the sixth man as the team is currently
yeah,
constructed. It's just in closing lineups.
yeah. I, I probably you couldn't keep him out there because I think you'd have Steph Curry getting the ball,
Yeah, just now
and
you're paying $30 million for your 39-year-old
yeah.
sixth man.
Yeah, and the defense between them 2, I don't know how that would work in the playoffs,
It
so,
wouldn't.
ex facts.
I mean, that's the truth of it. It wouldn't. You know, match
Yeah,
this team up against Phoenix. Who's
yeah,
guarding Devin Booker? And if the answer is Klay Thompson, who's guarding Bradley Beal? And if the answer is Andrew Wiggins, who's guarding Kevin Durant? And if the answer is Draymond Green, you lost the series. I mean, like, this team has more moves to make, and I believe that they will. I think Kaminga is clearly a key piece to them at this moment. The defensive responsibility that they're going to expect this guy to take on seems like a big one going into this upcoming season. And a lot of Warriors fans, you know, I put out a YouTube short about this. They were saying, I would take Chris Paul over Jordan Poole. And sure, in a vacuum, maybe, but you act like you were a title contending team last year. You were bounced in the second round by the
yeah,
7 seed Lakers. And, you know, I get it. The 7 seed Lakers a little bit of hyperbole, but you were bounced in the second round by a team that was swept in the conference finals.
mhm,
It's not like you were one step away from being a title team. There was a long ways to go. So while Chris Paul over Jordan Poole in a vacuum, sure. Now that Lakers series is a more competitive six, maybe it goes to a seventh, but I'm not seeing anything here that says, oh yeah, this team could stand toe to toe with Denver and win. And, that's where you're competing against. That's the bar. And for Golden State, they're clearly going all in. You don't bring in a 39-year-old point guard and be like, this is a 3-year plan. It's not for him. So, I'm going to move forward here, but Warriors fans, before you come at me, just think about it like that. Your team was more than one step away. And a trade that we finally disagree on, the Boston Celtics, Memphis Grizzlies, and Wizards. Wizards again in a 3-team deal. The 3-team deal saw Kristaps Porzingis and 2 first-round picks go to the Celtics, Marcus Smart go to the Grizzlies, and Tyus Jones and some salary filler guys to the Washington Wizards. Real quick, we both agree on the Wizards point, so I'm just going to keep it short here. Tyus Jones was a great ad. Kristaps Porzingis was likely leaving the team in free agency if he didn't move him, so it's a win for the Wizards. We both agree there. Where the disagreement comes is on the side of the Celtics and Grizzlies part of this thing. Now, I think we both agree that this trade wasn't good for the Grizzlies, unless you think it was. But I think 2 first-round picks to change Tyus Jones to Marcus Smart, again, not a needle mover. You were bounced in the first round. However, I think the Celtics got drastically better. In a league where you need size, they didn't have any. Al Horford was their primary big man defender, and he was going on 38 years old. Kristaps Porzingis isn't the best defender in the world, but during his best defensive season, he had a career great year, especially defending the pick and roll to the Anthony Davis level numbers. This guy is 7'3" and can shoot the ball. He's great on offense and coming off of a career season. If Kristaps Porzingis, his build was in the draft this year, it would have been the number 2 overall pick over Scoot Henderson. It's a 1-year deal, 1-year trial. If it doesn't work out, you got another $30 million. Jaylen Brown has yet to be extended. I'll be very interested to see what happens money-wise with him. I believe he's staying. Now, that's all cool fit-wise. The question is, what's this team's direction when it comes to things that aren't measurable? Your tweet was the heart and soul of the team is gone. To me, I think it's a good thing because I'm guessing Marcus Smart dominated Jason Tatum in the locker room, and now Tatum will be forced to be a leader. But I'll let you take the floor and defend why the Celtics screwed up big time getting rid of Marcus Smart.
All right, so I'm a huge Marcus Smart guy. He's on the Celtics, so it's a little bit tough for me. But ever since he was at Oklahoma State, I was pretty big on him. I loved the way he played. I loved his attitude, his effort, all of that. And I think the big thing that I look at, especially when it comes to the Celtics, is one, their coach doesn't have the best leadership. Um, Two, their players don't have the best leadership. And then three, you get rid of the guy who has the leadership. So when I look at the Boston Celtics, especially in the playoffs, bro, like Tatum, he had some great games in the playoffs, but especially in that Heat series, he was not that good in the fourth quarters. Jaylen Brown, when it came to second half, even the full game, couldn't dribble with his left hand, turnovers left and right. And I think having a guy like Marcus Smart, he was getting buckets, rebounds, assists, and just being a dog on the court. And it's not easy to have. Basketball is not all about stats. And I think that's the thing that people forget. And Porzingis, yeah, he's probably fits very well with that team. I don't know how he will be in the playoffs, but I'm excited to watch. But I think the biggest thing for me was that they were pretty much getting Porzingis for Malcolm Brogdon, and now it's Porzingis for Marcus Smart. I know they got a draft pick, an extra draft pick, but even so, that's the Warriors draft pick, and I don't know how great
Yeah,
that's
it'll,
going.
it'll be a late round pick for
Yeah.
sure. Even if
So
it
I
was
mean,
Memphis's own pick, it would have been late.
yeah. So just getting rid of Marcus Smart, he's been there for so long, and I think having that guy on your team, especially in the playoffs, it's a huge loss. I think for them,
Yeah,
especially because of their stars don't have that leadership in them, and I haven't seen it yet.
This was a huge risk reward move for Boston. There's no
Mhm.
doubt about that, especially with it being Marcus Smart, not Malcolm Brogdon. Because now you have Malcolm Brogdon and Kristaps Porzingis, two guys that have not been able to stay on the court. The
Yeah,
best
and
ability is availability, and
even
those guys have not consistently had it. If they do have it, this is a win for Boston. If they don't, they're going to be saying, shit, we wish we had Marcus Smart right now. I also think that this is a great vote of confidence in Derek White. Derek White was a better defender last year than Marcus Smart and a better scorer, and he better three-point shooter. This was kind of a passing of the reins moment. Boston, there were reports coming out that they weren't done earlier today. No moves were made thus far during the draft, but that doesn't mean that there's not more on the way. This team did just accumulate some extra draft compensation. They could still make some moves. You know, Grant Williams sign and trade was rumored. We'll see what shakes out. But I don't see any big drastic moves coming this team's way unless they really did something out of this world and a Jaylen Brown sign and trade for Damian Lillard happened. Obviously, we'd have to reassess the whole team and situation at that point, but otherwise, you know, I'm thinking Grant Williams and a pick for like Tim Hardaway Jr. maybe. But like nothing that, yeah, it's a good deal, but nothing that is
right.
needle moving or affects what we're saying here. This is going to be a real big test in terms of those intangibles. How valuable is a Marcus Smart for the other
Mhm.
things that he does? Will the Celtics be in the same spot? Does this force Jason Tatum to step up as a leader? I don't know, but the team has faith in Ime, or not Ime Udoka, Joe Mazzulla, clearly, because this move is the direction of what he wanted the offense to be. They let him bring in his own coaching staff. They didn't fire him. People were calling for his head, and instead they went all in on this guy. We'll see how it pans out for Boston. And
Good
now I
luck.
want to talk about the Memphis thing. You bring Marcus Smart in, who's a better shooter and a much more grown up version of Dylan Brooks. A better defender. You now have the last two Defensive Player of the Years, Marcus Smart and Jaren Jackson. Did this push the ceiling for you any further? Do you think Marcus Smart could be a good influence for John Morant? You know, to me, it still feels like a team that's playing catch up to the Nuggets, Lakers, Suns, maybe Warriors, but for me, they're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I love Marcus Smart, like I said. I do think it upgraded the team, but like you said, I mean, you have the Nuggets, you have the Suns, and I think they're just missing that extra offensive piece, the Grizzlies. And I don't know if they do it this offseason and the next, but I think that's what they're missing. And also with Ja, I mean, obviously he had that 25-game suspension,
Yeah.
and I don't know how that'll affect the team going into the season, but I do think it helps the team just because Marcus Smart is kind of like what everybody thought Dylan Brooks was, but he could really put it on you in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, and
So I
they
think it'll
weren't
be
healthy last season either,
yeah, for sure.
especially at the big position. You know, if you get into the playoffs with a lineup of John Morant, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Steven Adams, you know, we could be talking. They need some bench guard depth, in my opinion, and
Yeah,
some wings. You know, you have Xavier Tillman and Brandon Clark, and those guys are good off the bench. Losing Tyus Jones, to me, that hurts. He was their floor general for that second unit.
very underrated.
You know, he has the best assist to turnover ratio in the NBA. I think it's the last 4 years. This guy takes care of the ball. So they're certainly going to miss that. Now, we want to talk about the Suns deal. Obviously, you know, that happened like the day after we recorded. So it's kind of old news at this point, but we haven't given our takes on Bradley Beal to Phoenix. You know, I'm twofold on this. The Suns go all in, and I get it. On one hand, it's really going to hurt them in the future, but you have Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. You can win a title. Uh, you have to flip DeAndre Ayton for role players, though. That's my caveat. If they don't trade DeAndre Ayton, and it doesn't have to be right now, it could be at the trade deadline. You know, they have plenty of time to execute an Ayton for role players deal. But if you don't go into next playoffs with 6 or 7 guys that could really hoop and like really play quality minutes, you're going to be in the same boat as you were this year, where you're gassed out facing a good Nuggets team we're facing a good Lakers team, or if the Warriors make some more moves, or if the Grizzlies just add another bench piece or two, I'll like them better than the currently constructed Suns. But at the end of the day, here's my thoughts on it. You didn't have depth to begin with, and you flipped Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and picks that you didn't care about into Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal's healthy. That's a win. If it's not a win. But the Wizards, they've got a haul of picks now, and everybody's, kind of dogging the Wizards on Twitter. Oh, yeah, you flipped Bradley Beal, Porzingis, and Chris Paul into no quality players. Okay, but they weren't winning with those guys anyways. Like, they
Facts.
weren't even in the play-in. So, how quality were they for the Wizards? Hitting the reset button with this new ownership group, I don't hate. But where are you at with this Suns team? What do you think their future looks like?
I'm pretty similar in the fact that I love a team going all in. You have KD and Devin Booker. You got a couple years left, if any. And getting a guy like Beal is huge for them. But like you said, who else do they have? Aiton. Even last year, I was just kind of distraught that they decided to give him that contract because I was like, that does not fit them at all. And just going into next season, this is it. I mean, if they can get past Denver, I think that's their only kind of competition. And if they do that, then yeah, great. But if they don't, like I compare them to the Sixers actually because like they have a couple years left, and if not, then their whole team is it's out.
Yeah.
So
But the difference
um,
is with Philly,
they
if
have
their
Max.
whole team goes, they're not screwed for the
Exactly.
next. I mean, seriously, if this
Yeah.
Suns team doesn't work out, and I'm not being over exaggerating here, the Suns are screwed through the 2030s
Hmm.
because the money that they have on the books
Money.
puts them over that second apron where their draft picks 7 years out. It's 7 years out. So if they're over the salary cap by next season's trade deadline, their pick in 2031 goes to the last pick of the draft. So, based on where they're at money wise in 2024, affects their pick in 2031 when Kevin Durant won't be on the team anymore. Bradley Beal came into this league at 19. He's been an 11-year pro. I know he's 30, but he's an old 30. In 2031, he won't be on your team. It's going to be Devin Booker and whoever you can bring to Phoenix to play with him, and that's it. This team is going to be terrible throughout the 2030s if they don't get off the Ayton contract, and if they stay on it, they're still going to be bad in the 2030s, but at least maybe they could have won a ring or two in the 2020s.
Yeah,
But this is a huge, huge liability for them.
I think I would have loved the trade a lot more. I think if they were in the East, like we mentioned in the last podcast, the West is so stacked, bro. And the East, yeah, if you had those three guys and some role players, I think you could get to the finals with that. I
Yeah,
think that's the biggest thing in
yeah.
this whole scenario.
So a crazy thought that I've had a couple weeks ago during really the NBA playoffs. If Kevin Durant at the trade deadline didn't force his way out of Brooklyn, stayed on the Nets, Kyrie left and they brought in um, Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, and KD just stuck with those guys. That Nets team was a 4 or 5 seed at that point. So let's say that they match up in the first round with Cleveland. The Knicks beat Cleveland. The Nets with Kevin Durant certainly could have. Miami beat Milwaukee. The Nets team, with all the depth that they had, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kevin Durant, Dinwiddie, Claxton, they could have beaten the Heat. And then the Heat beat the Celtics, so they could have as well. Now the Nets could have been in the NBA Finals if Kevin Durant didn't leave.
Yeah, I
So
can see
that's
that.
where the East is different. As much as those top teams we talked about and we hyped them up, that's where it's different. And it'll be very interesting to see how it pans out. I want to end today's episode just with a little future speculation, specifically with your 76ers, because Tobias Harris is a name that's on the market. And it's a name that a lot of people said this offseason he's gone. for sure. And a lot of trustworthy sources said it. It's about 11 o'clock draft night. The 31st pick has been done in the draft, so I don't think Tobias is getting moved tonight. I guess maybe if you're watching this at 9 a.m. and he got moved at 3 a.m., you could skip to the end of the episode here because this is all speculation. But where does Tobias Harris get traded to? What's the package look like? I speculated on Twitter earlier a Tobias Harris back to the Clippers for Paul George. I could see that happening. Um, we just talked about Tobias Harris to Golden State for Klay Thompson. As a Sixers fan, what's your most ideal outcome, and where do you think it actually lands?
I mean, those two guys, Clay or PG-13, bro, they would be
If
huge
you had to
hits.
pick one, though, which one?
If I had to pick one between them,
Because it's
I would.
looking like Harden's going to come back.
If Harden stays, I'd probably take Klay Thompson, just because I saw in the playoffs against the Celtics, especially, they just needed that one guy to just hit those 3-pointers like that melted in Game 6. Just having that guy that you could count on to really
And do you
give
worry
that.
about the defense there, though? Because Harden, Maxey, Clay, I feel like Paul
Yeah,
George would be better to have out there defense wise.
yeah, for sure. But I